Check 1 2 1 2 1 2. Check check.
Valerie, I just wanted to do a mic check. Are you able to hear?
Now I am, but
Get going in just
it's
a minute here.
really messy. Whatever.
Yeah.
Valerie, are you online checking in with you? Valerie, checking in with you?
I'm on, but it's like
Started.
it's very sketchy. I don't know.
I think I heard you there, Valerie. You online?
Can you hear me?
Okay, now we can. Yes, thank you.
I am. Okay.
All right, good evening, everybody. We will call the regular meeting of Tuesday, April 13th, 2021 to order. Please join me for a flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Sarah, roll call, please.
Mayor Eisenbach,
Present.
Mr. Christensen,
Here.
Ms. Nelson,
Here.
Mr. Knox,
Here.
Mr. Mosier,
Here.
Ms. Duncan, here, and Ms. Himshoot, here.
Any correspondence or agenda changes from the assembly? And John, you did receive some correspondence that you'd like the assembly to be aware of?
Yes, I'll consider this a correspondence change just because this came in today. I think it's important for the public to hear, and I'll actually include it in the correspondence for the next agenda as well. So I'm going to read this. This is a letter from Republic Services, our transport company for municipal solid waste. And the letter states, "Dear Mr. Leach, Republic Services has recently received a letter dated March 10th, 2021 from Alaska Marine Lines, AML, to serve as a reminder of the upcoming June 1st, 2021 deadline for the city and borough of Sitka and other Southeast Alaska partners to adopt plans that will provide for a transportation of their solid waste systems to accommodate compacted waste in closed top containers for shipment on AML barges. AML has reiterated that they will continue working with communities to extend this deadline to allow for the planning, acquisition, and installation of compaction equipment with reasonable and mutually agreeable timelines to be adopted by the local assembly prior to the June 1st deadline. If agreeable plans are not adopted, AML is prepared to refuse shipment of municipal solid waste in open top containers beginning June 1st, 2021. Our team has continued to work with AML, CBS staff, and other stakeholders to explore all feasible alternatives to assist in making a transition to compacted waste in closed top containers to comply with the AML mandate. This may include Republic Services having to seek an alternative transportation for trucking and barge services. In the event CBS were to elect to not make the transition to compacted waste as part of the solid waste transfer system, and AML delivers notification of refusal to accommodate MSW in open top containers on their barges, Republic Services will seek the approval of an alternative service arrangement and provide all associated costs as a pass-through to the city and borough of Sitka, as prescribed in Article 8.3 and Article 9.1, the Transportation and Disposal Agreement. We continue to encourage the city and borough of Sitka to pursue plans to make the transition to compacted municipal solid waste as the safest, most environmentally secure, and efficient means of handling solid waste generated in the region. We are committed to continuing our work with the Sitka stakeholders group and are confident that reasonable solutions can be achieved in meeting all your solid waste needs. The reason I'm reading this out loud is, in my mind, that leaves the citizens and the ratepayers with two options. First option is we pay higher rates to follow what we are contractually obligated to do. The second is pay substantially higher rates to invest in $4 million estimated for compaction equipment. I want to remind everybody that this issue first came up to address fire risk. When I read that letter, nowhere in this letter did it say anything about fire risk. And I want to also explain that we, the city, have offered a reasonable solution as a removable hardtop system that could work at a much lower cost. And the conversation suddenly shifted to compaction after that. So there are more meetings coming up on this, and I believe on May 2nd should be the next meeting where Republic Services was going to make a presentation to the Assembly, and look forward to the discussion then. Thank you.
Thank you for reading that letter, and thank you for staying on top of this issue. Obviously, $4 million is not a feasible option for the citizens of Sitka. So I do appreciate your due diligence on that one.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
was the June 1st was the timeline they gave?
June 1st was the timeline to adopt a solution.
Yet they're presenting on May 2nd, so 2 more weeks they present, and a month after that, we are supposed to respond.
Correct.
May 11th.
May
not
11th
2nd.
is the presentation
So
date.
2 weeks after their presentation, they've set a deadline unilaterally for us to respond.
Yes and no. And I think we can talk about that at that meeting, but our contract is with Republic Services. The city and borough of Sitka does not have a contract with AML. AML is a subcontractor for Republic Services. Republic Services has a contractual obligation to continue shipping our municipal solid waste.
Okay, thanks.
okay, that'll bring us to ceremonial matters. Tonight, we do have 2 ceremonial matters before us. One, a certificate honoring Dave Miller, and a service award for Lloyd Platson. Mr. Miller, can you come forward, please? And you're welcome to sit in the chair and stay a COVID-safe distance away from us. I'm sorry, so you're not interim administrator anymore. So this is actually a very high honor here. This is the first one that I can remember of in my 7 years on the Assembly now, of seeing an Alaska Legislature memo honoring someone here in town. So congratulations to Dave Miller for this, and I'll go ahead and read this. Alaska Legislature honoring Dave Miller. The members of the 32nd Alaska State Legislature are proud to honor Dave Miller for his outstanding leadership, dedication, and commitment to the city and borough of Sitka while serving in the fire department over his 25-year career. Dave's contributions benefited the citizens of Sitka immensely. Dave joined the fire department as a volunteer in 1988 and was originally in charge of the kitchen at Sheldon Jackson College. 7 years later, he was hired as the department's engineer and became a career firefighter. In 1999, he was named fire chief. Dave soon took a 5-year detour serving in the police department. He reapplied for the chief position when City Hall had a difficulty filling the vacancy in 2009. He told the administrator at the time, "You might as well hire me. I'm already here and ready to work." As both fire chief and chair of Sitka's local emergency planning committee, Dave's leadership skills were instrumental in leading the city through devastation following multiple landslides on August 18th, 2015, that tragically claimed 3 lives. His compassionate approach and unwavering dedication to the mission resulted in a flawlessly executed response to the emergency and offered closure for the affected families. His expertise in emergency management proved once again to be instrumental as he worked tirelessly in the Emergency Operations Center to guide the city through its COVID-19 response efforts. Dave met daily with federal, state, and local stakeholders to plan and respond appropriately, ensuring the health and safety of Sitka's citizens through uncertain time. Dave and his wife, Denise Blankenship, will make their permanent home in Sitka, but they do plan to travel a bit for the next couple of years and, quote, try to figure out what they want to do when they grow up. It is with great pleasure that the members of the 32nd Alaska Legislature honor Dave for his many contributions to the people of Sitka and offer sincere congratulations on his retirement. It's signed by the Speaker of the House, President of the Senate, and Representative Christ Tompkins, the sponsor of this, dated March 1st, 2021. So congratulations, Mr. Miller. And if you could limit your speech to at least 30 minutes, we do have some other business tonight.
Well, I was going to write a speech and I couldn't get the words out right. So I guess all of those things say Dave Miller did this and Dave Miller did that. Dave Miller did this much, and the people that I work with and that I worked for, that being the career staff, guys like Craig Warren and Scott Foss, et cetera, on down the line, and volunteers like Greg Rashik and Matt Hunter and the 100 others and the 1,000 other volunteers that were with the fire department over the years, and all the career staff that were with the fire department over the years really did the job. And I got the credit for it just now. That's truly the way it is. This is the greatest community and that I haven't been in a lot. I've been a number of places, but this is the greatest community. No matter how much we may not agree, even at this table, how much you may not agree with each other, we always come together and do the right thing. And the right thing is to help this community and the people in this community. And that's been my goal forever, is just to make sure that the people in this community are getting along right, and we're doing it the right way. And the state, I've worked a lot of hours and spent a lot of time working with the state and the feds too, nationally. But we here in Sitka have the greatest group of people to work with, and we have the greatest group of volunteers and paid staff at the fire department, and I'm even going to give the police department some credit. They're not too bad either. I wouldn't tell the chief that personally, but I would tell the community that this community rocks. In everything that we do it very well, and we do it as a community, not just me. That's a long way from me, but we do it very well. And I say thank you very much for this honor.
Thank you. We've got a rather large framed picture here. I don't know what office you'll go hang this in now, but and let Renee know that the candy bar is still in there. I didn't take the candy bar either. And a next for Lloyd Platson. 5 years. Wow. It's going to be a different Health Needs and Human Services Commission without you for sure. So this is a service award on behalf of the City and Borough of Sitka to Lloyd Platson for his, this is an expression of grateful acknowledgement for over 5 years of valued services rendered in the public interest while serving on the Health Needs and Human Services Commission. Thank you. Mr. Platson, if you had something to say, you're welcome to.
Dave told me I didn't have any time to
And we all know that's the truth. So again, thank you for your 5 years. It will be a different planning or Health Needs and Human Services Commission without you. Okay, brings us to special reports. Is government to government? Municipal boards, commissions, committees? Municipal departments? School district? Students and guests? Okay, seeing none, that brings us to persons to be heard for any item not on tonight's agenda, not to exceed 3 minutes per person, please.
Good evening, Mayor Eisenbites and Assembly. I'm Dr. Elliot Brule. I'm the Senior Vice President and CMO for Search. And I'd like to give you an update on COVID-19 and our current medical practice. Throughout my career, there's really been nothing as gratifying as the work that we've been doing here in this community in the last year around COVID-19, the vaccine rollout, and working to keep the community safe. Testing for COVID-19 remains available in all of our communities, including Sitka, and to all of our patients. And identifying positive cases continues to be really one of the most impactful mitigation measures that we can do to predict spread within our community. We've conducted more than 114,000 tests in Southeast since the beginning of the pandemic, and over 55,000 tests here in Sitka alone. Just under 11,000 patients across the region have been vaccinated by our services, and more than 3,600 patients here in Sitka. We continue to host vaccine clinics, including clinics for teens 16 to 18 years old, and continue to work with strong partnerships with organizations such as the Sitka School District, the Safe Shelter, and the fishing community and fish processing community to reduce COVID risk level and provide vaccines. We continue to encourage the public to be a part of the solution and adhere to public health measures even after being fully vaccinated. So masking, hand washing, etc. It's been very gratifying to work with the Unified Command System and with Administrator Leach and the rest of the fire department and other leaders to work to keep Sitka safe. The work of our medical practice continues in spite of all the work that we're doing for COVID-19. We've recently, within the last 6 months, been able to expand our specialty clinics to include 4 additional neurologists, 3 additional cardiologists, full-time orthopedic surgery, including joint replacement, surgical podiatry, and sleep medicine. And our intensive outpatient treatment for people with alcohol dependence and substance abuse problems continues with daily counseling and treatment, a residential shelter for those participants, and the opportunity for virtual participation as well. Our Ravens Way program for adolescent substance abuse treatment also continues in full force. So thank you for allowing me to give this update.
Yes, and thank you for your continued diligence with the COVID issue. I do very much appreciate being one of the most vaccinated places in America right now. That's very reassuring. So thank you. Any other persons to be heard this evening?
Richard Ween, just want to thank Dave Miller for all his work. I guess that if he's going to be traveling, it means they remove the ankle monitoring bracelet that they had on his ankle. So I hope he enjoys it. And he did look a little tan, so that's good news. And Lloyd Plaxton, always was a pleasure to go to those meetings, an intelligent, thoughtful man. And also to thank Elliot Brule for his leadership within the community as it relates for this most interesting and difficult year. Something I wasn't going to talk about per se, but when Mr. Leach brought up the letter from AML and its Associated Republic trash, my notion is that we always, and if you notice my blue face, it's because I'm tired of talking about it, a comprehensive solid waste solution. And that does not really ultimately include the transport of waste off of this island. We need to deal with it for ourselves because AML is just the tip of the iceberg. It won't be too long before Washington and Oregon may not want our waste, and we need to be way ahead of that. And a comprehensive solid waste program, which would clearly include compost, et cetera. In the packet was the quarterly financials, and I reviewed it, and very interesting stuff. But since I only have 1 minute, 30 seconds to go, there was one particular thing on page 11, which has to do with the fundamentals of city finance. And here's a quote from it. Management's overriding concern for the general fund continues to be the inadequate size of its unassigned fund balances compared to the known deferred maintenance amounts, and the small amount of annual surplus when compared to the potential future general obligation bond debt service. The condition of general governmental infrastructure, school buildings, streets, city hall, the police station, etc., continues to deteriorate each year as the facilities age. This is something that represents the fundamentals, which really have not been addressed. We hear about this big surplus that we have this year, but again, it's the same as every year, meaning we're just going month to month, paying the bills. And now we hear this additional thing in relation to our solid waste transport. And I think we really need to reconsider. The good news is the rescue plan is going to print a lot of money. And if you go over what those funds are for, Sitka seems to fit the bill in many of those areas. So may the force be with us, and we do well in getting some money, because we'll need it. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Eisenbeis, Assembly, staff, and everybody listening on Raven Radio. My name is Doug Osborne, and I was thinking about how we pay tributes to people in town. There was a lovely, I think, tribute to Chief Miller and to Lloyd Platts, and I think about people who passed away to the Alice McChesney Memorial Bike Shed near where she used to go and volunteer, and Richard Nelson's bench out in the woods that he loved, and Ryan Kaufman by Blatchley. And I wanted to share an idea about making a tribute to somebody who's recently passed away. I was so impressed with his letter to the editor, I cut it out. This is from March 12th. It's our former electric department head, Chris Bruton, who's since passed away. But I thought instead of a bench or a portrait or something that we could look at some of these ideas and maybe a policy kind of in honor, because his idea is basically let's bring more customers into the electric department. So I just wanted to read a couple points. And then one thing I liked about this too, and I remember I work at Search. I remember exec saying it's so nice when somebody comes not just with a problem, but with solutions. And he had these 4 really detailed ideas that I think could help Sitka, which is what we're all here for. So I'm just going to read a couple things from his letter. It says, I agree with Assembly Member Valerie Nelson that we do not need an electric rate increase. What we actually need is a load increase. As I recall, Blue Lake expansion had 2 major objectives. First was to minimize the need for supplemental diesel generation, and the second was to provide an opportunity for economic growth and prosperity. The first goal has been a complete success, the second one an abject failure. And then he goes on to talk about how we could bring in some more customers, how we could grow it. And he talked about establishing a low-cost agricultural rate. And he said there may be hobby farmers who might be interested in doing it for profit. Establish commercial fleet electric rate. And this may encourage the growth of electric vehicles. Number 3 was street and security light services. And maybe with some of the CARES money, there may be some opportunities there. And then the 4th one was this energy assistance fund. So I think there's a lot of interest in making the most of this really valuable resource that we have. He's listed out some ideas. Maybe you have some ideas, but I think it'd be a lovely tribute to somebody who in his final days on planet Earth was writing about how he could help the town, how he could help all of us. So I encourage everybody who's listening and who appreciated Chris' work and what he did to think about how we can use our own clean, renewable, local energy. Thanks.
Is there anyone else for persons to be heard? And Sarah, we had someone to call. Thank you.
Hello. Hey, Lisa, it's Sarah calling from the Assembly meeting. It's your opportunity under persons to be heard to speak. If you could state your name for the record, and then your 3 minutes will begin.
Thank you so much. My name is Lisa Bush, and I'm the Executive Director of the Sitka Sound Science Center. I wanted to give you just a quick update to you and the community about some of the landslide warning system stuff that our community is developing with our academic and government partners funded by the National Science Foundation. The idea of a community-led landslide warning system was first hatched after the 2015 landslide that killed our friends and family and destroyed property. The Science Center gathered a group of community members, researchers from academic institutions and federal and state agencies to share information and find out what we need to know about the hillside to protect our town. It will be the first landslide warning system in Alaska, but not the first in the nation. In addition to developing a network that is collecting a variety of geoscience information, our team has convened community stakeholder workshops, and community members told us that they don't want a siren-based alarm system that could be confused with tsunami warnings. Rather, they would like a digital dashboard that integrates all the information we can collect related to landslides, like soil moisture, soil pore pressure, river flow, weather data on Harbor Mountain, citizen science rain gauge data, past data from the Forest Service landslide inventory, combined with the National Weather Service forecasting. The idea is to develop a danger threshold like other places have for forest fire danger. Individuals will be able to go to a digital dashboard to see what their danger level is and make their own choices about how to respond. We're working with computer designers right now to create a dashboard that's simple to use and accessible to as many people as possible. The other aspect of landslide research that's new right now is the landslide insurance. We've heard from city officials, planners, bankers, realtors, insurance representatives, and homeowners about the concern about not being able to get insurance for Sitka houses. So we went back to the National Science Foundation and asked for more funds to research this issue. This month, our scientist in residency fellow is Max Eisenberg from the RAND Corporation, who is here researching this very topic. He's collecting information from mortgage and insurance companies, seeing what communities and other places in the world are doing for landslide insurance, talking to our planners and Sitka homeowners, and the plan is that they will make recommendations to our community. Max will be happy to chat or get together with anyone in the community who wants to share their experience or find out more of what he's learning. So contact the Science Center to get his information, his contact information. And I thank you so much for the opportunity to give you a little update. That's it.
Thank you. Appreciate the update on the landslide warning. And that was the only, all right, thank you. Brings us to consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, can I pull item B?
Yep, item B is pulled. Consent agenda, item A.
I move to approve consent agenda item A, consisting of the meeting minutes from the March 4, 9, 18, 23, and April 1st meetings.
Second.
Is there any public comment on the consent agenda item A? Sarah?
Mayor Eisenbeis,
Yes.
Ms. Nelson,
Yes.
Ms. Himshoot,
Yes.
Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
Mr. Knox,
Yes.
Ms. Duncan,
Yes.
and Mr. Mosier.
Yes.
The motion passes 7-0 on item A.
Brings us to item B.
I move to approve the Health Needs and Human Services Commission goals of 2021.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the Health Needs and Human Services Commission's 2021 goals. Is there any public comment?
Richard Ween, as a former liaison to the Health Needs and Human Services Commission. I know that they have to submit the goals that they have and they wish to work on. There are two. One is easy, and I understand it, talking about long-term food security, composting, et cetera. And I understand that. The first goal, however, is to accept the people of the global majority in Sitka 2021 health project. Now, when I look through the packet, I really didn't find anything that would truly help to explain it, except the use of the subjunctive, which I presume, which stated, which would include, for example, current health data, et cetera, et cetera. So I presume that the document has not been written yet. And that's how I interpret the word would. But I did look up the people of the global majority, and I would, before accepting these goals, either to have a short presentation by the people from the health needs community to explain this to the community and to give us some insight into what they would like to achieve, especially with goal number one. So it's important when you vote to know what you're voting for. So I saw Doug Osborne and Charlie Woodcock back there, and I don't know whether the assembly would want them to speak now or to arrange some other informational type of format for them to explain, I'm sure, their very laudable goals. Thank you.
Is there any other public comment to the motion on the floor? Assembly deliberation, Kevin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I pulled this because Dr. Wayne actually hit on some of these. These are kind of important goals. I'm not sure that the consent agenda was the appropriate place for this. And also we have kind of a big ticket item on our agenda tonight. I don't really know if I want a presentation or to call people up. As it is now, I'll vote no on it because the people of the global majority report in Sitka isn't included in this. So how can I vote on something I don't know what it is? I mean, I could have Googled it, but it should be in the packet. Number two, here it says to research, assess, provide written communication to assembly about the composting, community gardens, food security issues. These are great. I love them. I've long thought food security is really important. The thing that, and I don't want to get all into some debate because I know this can be kind of a big, hot issue for some people. I just want to clarify why I'm voting no. At the very end, at the very bottom, it says, after the first sentence is, this report will include data, current data, historical context, information on health disparities, community input, resources, promising strategies used with other municipalities, plus recommendations for promoting racial equity for the assembly to consider with a focus on Black, Indigenous, and people of color that is 35% of Sitka's population. So I'll just make it short and sweet. The word equity means equality, technically, and I believe that the racial equity has become a very hot button issue, and the meaning of it has transformed over the years. And I do believe that there are terrible things that have happened in the past. I don't want to get into that right now, but my personal stance, as short as I can make it, is that, and I've discussed this with another assembly member very respectfully in the past, is that the way to solve racial problems and issues is that you make sure everyone has equal rights, the right to vote, the right to attain a job without discrimination, by race, no discrimination by race, sexual orientation, what have you. But I believe that there is a movement afoot on a global scale to kind of offer special advancements to people of color. Basically, I just don't agree with that. I believe that all people should be treated equally, regardless of the color of their skins. And we should not be offering any type of financial, health, or employment benefits to anyone based on the color of the skin. True equity is treating everyone equally. And I do think we should be colorblind. Some people don't think that, but I do think that. That is my political belief. I don't want to debate that tonight. I don't want to get into it. I'm not trying to create some sort of issue, but I can't support something that has that on that. Now, I could have, I'm not liaison, and so if I had a little more time, I've been focusing on one of the agenda items, so it's kind of kept my mind occupied, but I would have no problem if this was postponed to meet with some of the liaison or some of the representatives of that commission to find out what they mean by that. Perhaps my understanding will be greatly improved and changed, and maybe I would change my mind. But as it is now, I can't support that, and that's why I wanted to pull it. Thank you.
Valerie?
I too will be voting no, because I don't see what it is that we are voting in favor of. I mean, I read the minutes and it's like, we're supposed to be able to understand what that is. And many of us are very sensitive to inequality and inequities that are, being alleged because we are of a different color or a different race. And I can't vote in favor of this without seeing what the actual issue is. Thank you.
Rebecca?
I had a question on this item as well, but my question has to do with the minutes in the meeting where the question comes up, would the commission do this or hire outside to produce reports? And it says that one of the commissioners suggested this report would be outsourced and back to the commission for review and a vote. Does this commission have a funding source for that? Like if
That
they're
is not
outsourcing
my
something?
understanding.
So I need more information just about the funding, if this is something that's going to be outsourced. I trust the commissioners to go in the right direction, so my issue with this is not the same as the previous speakers. But if something's going to be outsourced, I assume there's a, and then again, there would have been a fiscal note to this, right? Is that right, Mr. Leach?
And the health needs chairman is here if you'd like him to come up and speak to
I don't know
that.
if we want to open the entire can of worms here. If we
Okay.
could we table this and bring it back?
Personally, I'm sorry, Mr. Leach, I would prefer to table this or just postpone it to another meeting, have a little more time to flesh it out. I'd like to move on to other items, but that's my preference. But Mr. Leach, sorry, I interrupted.
No, not at all. Was there a question for me
Yeah,
to
my
answer?
question was just about funding for something that's going to be outsourced, and maybe the commission has someone who's going to do the work as a volunteer. I don't know, but I was concerned about anything that has money, but there was no fiscal note with it. Does that mean it doesn't cost money, or that means we haven't asked the question?
This was an item raised directly from the commission to the assembly. It was not routed through me for that fiscal note analysis on it, but yes, any funding requested would have been through our staff, and we did not receive any request for funding to accomplish this.
I could see going two directions. We can table it and I can try to get my question answered, or we can ask the chair of the commission to at least answer my question.
Yeah, that would be
Okay.
your prerogative at any time you can make the motion. So Kevin Knox?
So in the past, this commission has taken up other things that they have funded through the Sitka Health Summit, and organizations that are represented at the table by individuals. They have put up money or resources to be able to do different things, different bodies of work. In my reading of the minutes and just my knowledge of the work that this commission has done in the past, the goal to me when I read it was something that they were putting forward as a goal of body of work that they were going to bring forward at some point to the assembly. I personally do not have any issue with this commission taking on a body of work that they would then bring forward if there was actionable items in it or not. I think it's admirable that we have a commission that does take on a great deal of work within the groups that are represented there, the individuals. They have often brought forward things that have been extremely valuable to the city of Sitka, and I think having them do this kind of work is great. For that, I don't have any issue passing this tonight and having them take on the work that they wish to take on. I would find it, if I was on a commission, and I would find it a little bit disheartening, I guess, if I was told that I shouldn't be doing any work that, the body feels like is an important piece of progress for them.
So just to try to provide clarity from the last meeting where they discussed it, they're not asking for a financial piece to pay for it. The conversation was around 2014 when they did that comprehensive health study. That was grant funded. We know we don't have that this time around. And so they sat at the table and they kind of debated. Last year we had 4 to 5 goals. This year we're not going to do any more than 2 because we want this to be the main focus. So I think in answering that question, no, they're not going to come forward and say, now we need to hire a consultant to write this. Their goal is to basically spend the remainder of the year getting something together. I'm not seeing it in the meeting minutes, so I can't remember. I think there were for the 2 goals, different timelines, but it's basically late fall that they're hoping to bring something with recommendations. They're just trying to look at health disparities, which exist across community of colors. And they basically focused on the population that has the greatest health disparities. So community of colors here in Sitka, we have the Filipino community, we have Alaska Native community. So they're not trying to disclude white folks in this report. They're trying to look at health across the board to make recommendations, knowing that this is something that we struggle with and that we want the healthiest community that we could provide. And they're willing to basically take on the legwork. So the commission is going to be next agenda item, possibly fully staffed at this point in time. And so they said, what can we produce this year, knowing that we're the ones that are going to be producing it? And so the financial piece, I hope I addressed that one. And then as far as what it's going to look like, it's going to be a report about health with recommendations on how we can improve it, particularly with communities of colors who have, we just look at COVID. The disparity, community of colors versus not, there's a great one. And so they're concerned about that. And they decided to take this on as their main goal to look at. The second one is kind of time permitting. They're both great goals. They really had to think about, are they being too ambitious? And so that's why they kind of ranked them. They said this is going to be the number 1 to produce this report. And then number 2 would be their secondary goal. And so they're doing it a little bit different this year. I support them. I saw a lot of conversation happening at that last meeting, and they've been talking about it for the past 4 meetings. So this is something that they're really interested and they're serving and they're willing to take it on. So I'm fine leaving it on there. I'm fine voting in favor of it. I think it's a great commission. Again, like I said, it's about to be fully staffed and they're the ones that are willing to put in the legwork. So.
Rebecca?
So I feel like that, I believe that answers my concern about finances, and I trust the commission to do the work that they need to do. So I'm ready to vote.
Kevin, did you have anything else, or?
Just clarification. So the People of the Global Majority Report and Sitka Health Report, has that been created yet or not? So this is where my confusion. I'm not trying to be like a pain or anything, but we're voting to accept a report that hasn't been written, right?
We're voting to accept the goal to write the report. That's the commission's goal.
Okay,
is to
so
write
that
the
just needs
report.
to be, the wording makes you believe that, okay, well, that helps me understand. I think we should just vote on it.
All right, seeing nothing else, Sarah?
Okay, on the motion to approve the Health Needs and Human Services Commission 2021 goals, Mr. Knox,
Yes.
Ms. Duncan,
Yes.
Mayor Eisenbeiss,
Yes.
Ms. Himshoot,
Yes.
Mr. Mosier,
No,
Ms. Nelson,
No,
and Mr. Christensen.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-2 on item B.
Brings us to item C.
We move to appoint Lexi Fish Hackett to a 3-year term on the Health Needs and Human Services.
Second.
Crystal did.
Is there any public comment on the appointment of Lexi Fish Hackett?
Richard Ween. It is very nice to see how many just wonderful people stepping up to be parts of boards and commission. And Lexi Fish Hackett is one of those individuals who's very kind and intelligent and would be an asset to any of the boards or commission that she would serve on. And on health and needs, I would gather this might be the last slot to be filled. So they should have a powerhouse commission there. So we wish her good luck and the health needs and human services. Thank you.
Any other comments to the appointment? Back to the assembly. Sarah?
Okay, on the motion to appoint Lexi Fish to a 3-year term on the Health Needs and Human Services Commission, Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
Mayor Eisenbais,
Yes.
Ms. Himshoot,
Yes.
Mr. Mosier,
Yes.
Ms. Duncan,
Yes.
Ms. Nelson,
Yes.
and Mr. Knox.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0 on item C.
Brings us to item D.
I move to reappoint Shauna Thornton to a 3-year term on the Port and Harbors Commission and Trish White to a 3-year term on the Local Emergency Planning Committee under Category 5 Owners, Operators of Facilities.
Second.
Is there any public comment to the reappointments of these two individuals?
Richard Ween. The key word here is reappointment. It means that these individuals want to continue to serve. Shauna Thornton is a manager over at First National Bank, and she is very highly motivated and a very excellent community participant. And so I'm glad she put up with another 3-year term for Ports and Harbor. However, I don't wish to disrespect anybody, but Trish White is in another orbit when it comes to community service. And I think that it shouldn't be the legislature that should honor her because it is literally sainthood that needs to be applied. That she and her husband Dirk have served this community in the most extraordinary ways over an extended period of time. And I am amazed and actually gratified that they still consider to continue doing business here. And hopefully they will continue for a very long time. Their commitment and service to the community is just exemplary and extraordinary. So thank you.
Are there any other comments to these reappointments? To the assembly for deliberation? Sarah?
Sorry, my hand is up.
Yes, please, Valerie.
I want to reiterate Dr. Ween's comments on Trish White. She's been awesome. I am the liaison to the LEPC, and she is very attentive to details and a lifelong resident, and I will be voting yes. Thank you.
Anything else from the assembly? Sarah?
Okay, on the motion to reappoint Shauna to a 3-year term on Port and Harbors and Trish to a 3-year term on LEPC. Ms. Nelson?
Yes.
Mr. Christensen?
Yes.
Ms. Himshoot?
Yes.
Mr. Knox?
Yes.
Ms. Duncan?
Yes.
Mr. Mosier?
Yes.
And Mayor Eisenbais.
Yes.
The motion passes 7-0 on item D.
Brings us to unfinished business, item E.
I move to approve ordinance 2021-05 on second and final reading, making supplemental appropriations for the fiscal year 2021 pet adoption veterinary services.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment?
Richard Ween. As you may remember in the last episode, a pet adoption is for $10,000, which in essence are for neutering services. And this should be the reminder that the neutering services are there because the pound, in essence, have a lot of abandoned pets. And it is just very important that that people understand when they get a pet that it's a commitment, and we have to be wary of them because they are sensate beings and need to be respected. And so this pet adoption, if people would care for their pets, we wouldn't have had to make this appropriation. So please be mindful of your animals, and they deserve respect and love as well. Thank you.
Any other comment to the motion? Assembly deliberation? Sarah?
Okay, on the motion to approve ordinance 2021-05 on second and final reading, Ms. Nelson,
Yes.
Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
Mayor Eisenbach,
Yes.
Ms. Duncan,
Yes.
Ms. Timshut,
Yes.
Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
and Mr. Knox.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0 on item E.
And it is a little bit early, but before we get into new business, I'd like to take our recess now as we got a couple big and important new business items coming up. So we'll take our recess. Thank you.
Did he say how long?
5 minutes or so, Valerie.
Thank you.
Valerie checking in with you, see if you made it back online.
I am here. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, well, that brings us to new business first reading, which is item F.
I move to approve ordinance 2021-06 on first reading, making supplemental appropriations for fiscal year 2021 Aragon Centennial Hall AV upgrades.
Second.
Is there any public comment to ordinance 21-06?
Laurie Boysa, Director of Visit Sitka. And I just want to speak to supporting this ordinance, because as we move forward in the world of meetings and conventions and facilities for meetings and conventions, we're all seeing the development of the new hybrid meeting and different ways that people are finding to connect with each other and to meet. And having the best facilities that are available is what's going to keep people coming back year after year for their meetings. We're also going to be welcoming in 2022 the ATIA convention, which is going to be over 400 attendees, and they will probably be adding a hybrid online version as well. We want to make sure that we can service these groups of people to the best of our ability. And this also helps us keep moving forward to create better and better experiences for our visitors who come here for meetings and conventions. So I just wanted to say thank you, and in hopes that you'll support this so that we can keep bringing people into town. Thanks.
Any other public comment on the item?
Richard Ween. I agree with Lori. Certainly we need to keep up with this. This is for $65,000 for coder decoders in the audio visual department of Harrigan Centennial Hall. But what's interesting, if you read the kind of history of the company that supplied these things, which was done in 2016, that the company was sold like 3 times over during this 5-year period, et cetera. And another kind of head scratch, though I know there's probably a good reason, is that something like this really an argument could have been made to have it under CARES funding, and it was addressed in the memo that was given. But the question is, why couldn't this money actually be done? The additional monies that the city had for CARES, they put into public safety, and it's a good thing. But this thing certainly had an opportunity, and again, I don't know the inner details, to be paid for by the CARES funding, because these things, meaning having an adequate audiovisual and functional audiovisual department here at Harrigan Centennial Hall, which is a center, which is the center of government in essence, certainly represents a safety issue which could have been covered. And I'm sorry that this $65K is not going to be so. Thank you.
Any other comments to the motion? Assembly deliberation. John.
If I can kind of introduce what this is and why this is coming forward. I'll be the first one to say and apologize for the poor timing. And I'd like to address a couple things. One of them being all of the units at once. And the first question I asked is, are we going to be doing this again in 5 years? So in my past life of logistics, questions I asked were planned obsolescence and DMS, diminishing manufacturing sources, which what you're seeing here. So the goal is to get a shelf stock to replace the aging parts, because we have no more parts remaining. Is to set up a service contract of sorts, so we don't have to do this over and over again. I'd like to see an annual contract with replacements and service requirements and performance metrics in there. So that's our long-term goal. As far as the funding piece of it, I asked the same questions. Why did this not get put into the CARES budget? I asked, can it wait for the FY22 budget? If it can wait for the FY22 budget, why did we do it right now? And I will say, and we tried to address it here in the memo, is that yes, it would be CARES eligible. And if we talk about money moving from one column to another, you know, the CARES money that was unspent by having leftover budget in some of the other categories was redirected to public safety. Anything that was redirected to public safety reduce the burden on the general fund, and then this will be an appropriation from the general fund. So I'm not going to say we are spending CARES money, but we had a reduced burden on our general fund, and we'll be able to make this appropriation. Also, we'd like to close out the CARES fund, the CARES funding appropriations and spending, because if we start to carry that over into the next fiscal year, then that triggers another audit in another fiscal year. So we don't want to have those increased audit expenses if we don't close out CARES before the end of this fiscal year. So hopefully I've outlined all my reasons for this coming forward. Mr. Rosas is here if you have any technical questions on the need. But the bottom line is the parts are no longer available, the ones we have. And we really have to address the DMS issue at the moment and get the, because we will have increased burden on our IT infrastructure here. Thanks.
Rebecca?
Valerie did have her hand up.
Valerie, do you still have something?
I do. I'm in favor of this as somebody that's trying to attend remotely from St. Louis, Missouri. My thing keeps going in and out, and my son has like high-speed internet. So I'm not sure if it's the Centennial Building issue, but I keep dropping in and out on audio, video, whatever. And I think that if we're going to attract people for conventions and whatnot, we have to have the best technology. Thank you.
Rebecca?
I just need to be really clear. This contract for services are we paying for that now, or that's a future, like we're going to do the upgrades now and then an eventual solution will be this contract with someone?
My plan is the upgrades now. We get it, we make everything whole. And then going into the next fiscal year, as we develop the next year's budget, so starting to look a year down the road, I want to develop a service contract with a provider to maintain the
So they would
facilities.
take the equipment, whatever we end up with right now as our solution, they just take it as is and maintain it. It's not that they install and maintain. So we have to find somebody who will take as is and run with it.
Correct. It's something like a performance-based logistics contract is what I'd look to set up.
Okay, thanks.
And you'll be researching those companies now so that we install the correct components that they'll want to work on. Because if we have a leading company we'd like to work with, I'm sure they only deal with Yamaha or Honda or whatever it is. So
absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. Valerie, we can come back to you if you had something else. A perfect example of the issues she was just speaking of.
I think she did that on purpose.
Valerie, if you do jump back on, just cut in whenever you need.
I did get back on. I'm stopping the video. Can you hear me?
Yep, we got you. Thank you.
I just want to reiterate that if we can't connect because of what's going on there or here or whatever, it doesn't work. And I think it's a good idea to redo this. And it should also be worth noting that we cannot obligate future assemblies to a, like a contract that goes on in perpetuity. Thank you.
Sarah, item F.
Okay, on the motion to approve ordinance 2021-06 on first reading, Mr. Mosier,
Yes.
Ms. Timshute,
Yes.
Ms. Nelson,
Yes.
Mayor Eisenbeiss,
Yes.
Mr. Knox,
Yes.
Mr. Christensen.
Yes.
And Ms. Duncan.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0 on first reading, item F.
Item G.
I move,
Go ahead. I move to approve ordinance 2021-07 on first reading, amending ordinance number 2020-30, passed and approved on June 9th, 2020, and establishing an effective date, extension of expiration date for refinancing AEA loan.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment on item G?
Richard Ween, this is certainly an easy one. Anytime that you can refinance is a good day. And this is going to be refinancing loans from 1979, which apparently are coming due. And these savings are reasonable. The problem is that the delay it caused probably from the litigation, et cetera, as it related to the Alaska Bond Bank, probably cost the city some money in the refinance because the interest rates are going up, and therefore the advantage of a year ago will not be seen when we do refinance. That being said, anytime you can do a refinance, it's good. And hopefully they'll get a much better deal than they got originally. Thank you.
Is there any other comment to item G? Assembly deliberation? Sarah?
Okay, on the motion to approve ordinance 2021-07 on first reading, Mayor Eisenbeiss,
Yes.
Mr. Christensen.
Yes.
Ms. Nelson,
Yes.
Mr. Knox,
yes.
Mr. Mosier,
Yes.
Ms. Duncan,
Yes.
and Ms. Timshute.
Yes.
The motion passes 7-0 on item G, and that's first reading.
Item H.
I move to approve resolution 2021-08 on first and final reading, supporting the Sitka Maritime Heritage Society's application under the FY21 Historic Preservation Fund Grant Program for certified local governments.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve resolution 21-08. Is there any public comment? There's a button on the very bottom. There you go.
Right. My name is Rebecca Polson, and I'm with the Maritime Heritage Society, and these are certified local government grants. They're available only to certified local governments, which Sitka is. And it's federal grants that, they're not super big, but they leverage a lot of work and a lot of progress. And I want to thank the Assembly and the city for, partnering with us on these. And it's anyway, it's a neat project. I don't know if there's any questions or.
If the Assembly has questions, we're welcome to call you back up if you're
Okay.
so willing. So
Super. Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah.
thank you. Any other comment on resolution 21-08? Assembly deliberation.
I just had a question about the covenant.
Mhm.
So previous grants, it's in place through 2024, and all this does is extend that through 2026. Is that correct?
John, would you be able to help me out on that one?
I don't know the answer to that question. Melissa, do you know? Okay, Amy does.
know if Amy's coming up, we're gonna get the answer.
If we ask around enough, then we find someone who does have the answer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Assembly members, Amy Ainsley, Planning Director. So to answer your question, the State Historic Preservation Office, or SHPO, has asked the city and borough of Sitka to sign the covenant that would extend to 2024. We have not yet done that. We were not made aware of that requirement until fairly recently. So we are in the process of kind of processing that request from SHPO. But if we are to sign that covenant, it would extend till 2024. I spoke with a couple of representatives from SHPO over the last week or so to get confirmation from them as to if we submit this application, what additional covenant requirements will result. And the answer that I received was that they would ask for 2 more years past the current ask of 24 to extend to 2026.
Thank you very much.
And if there are any other questions about the grant program itself, I'm happy to, we've processed quite a few of these in the past. So if there, I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Anything else for Amy so we don't make her jump up and down and up and down? Well, if you had a Fitbit, you'd get that much closer to your 10,000. Thank you. Anything else from the assembly? Sarah?
And the motion to approve resolution 2021-08 on first and final reading, Mr. Knox,
Yes.
Ms. Duncan,
Yes.
Mayor Eisenbeiss,
Yes.
Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
Ms. Himshoot,
Yes.
Mr. Mosier,
Yes.
and Ms. Nelson.
Yes.
And the motion passes 7-0.
Item I.
I move to approve resolution 2021-09 on first and final reading supporting Alaska Arts Southeast application under the FY21 Historic Preservation Fund Grant Program for certified local governments.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve resolution 21-09. Is there any public comment? Assembly deliberation on this one?
Seems very similar to the last one. Nice to get some money into town to get some things done.
And Sarah?
Okay, and a motion to approve this resolution on first and final reading, Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
Mayor Eisenbeiss,
Yes.
Ms. Himshoot,
Yes.
Ms. Duncan,
Yes.
Ms. Nelson,
Yes.
Mr. Knox,
Yes.
and Mr. Mosier.
Yes.
The motion passes 7-0 on item H.
That brings us to item J, which is a discussion direction decision on the RFP for the sale of the former Sitka Community Hospital site and associated properties. It's out of the ordinary, but I would ask the assembly if we could relax the rules and allow public comment before we get into this. If anyone would like to make that motion. I believe that there are people here from the public who would like to speak on this, and I would like to hear them before we go in. And then also understanding that there would be opportunities to speak if any motions are made this evening.
I will make a motion to suspend the rules to allow public testimony.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to suspend the rules to allow public testimony. Sarah?
Ms. Himshoot,
Yes.
Mr. Knox,
Yes.
Ms. Duncan,
Yeah.
Mr. Mosier,
Yes.
Mayor Eisenbeiss,
Yes.
Ms. Nelson,
Yes.
and Mr. Christensen.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
All right, so before we begin our discussion, is there any public comment on the RFP for the sale of the former Sitka Community Hospital site?
Hello, Assembly, Mayor Eisenbeis. My name is Karen Lucas, and I went to both of the public hearings. I also filled out the survey. And when the whole thing started, I came before you to request that it come to a public vote. And I just want to reiterate that option. I know that, grateful that the public had an opportunity to comment and present and let their desires be known. And what I came away with was that at both of the public hearings, there was a preponderance of people there that said, no, please don't, not now. It seemed untimely. There were a couple voices that said, yes, sell it. I want to rephrase it more in terms of not selling, but rather retaining a huge, beautiful chunk of public land that should come to a public vote. And the reason for that is, looking at the surveys, there were 221 that were returned, which represents 2.6% of our population, which is hardly a number that would be indicative of the wishes of our community. I think if you want a real valid, temperature gauge of what people want, it really needs to go to a vote. And so I guess that's my plea. I think that the RFP just needs to be postponed, tabled, whatever is appropriate until after a public vote. Because again, the potential is huge for that particular part of our town, and to sell it off, it's over. I mean, there's nothing the public can do there anymore. And so I am just saying that it doesn't seem quite appropriate that 8 or 7 of you should decide the outcome of our public lands. So I'm asking you to please put it to a vote of the public. Thank you.
Is there any other public comment on the RFP for the sale of the former Sitka Community Hospital site?
Richard Ween. For those who spent the time to review the RFP, you will see that it is completely written for search, that every element of it, they already have the answer, whether it is site design, whether it is community impact, or any number of those things that are there. They even have a section that has on page 17 included description of how current lease agreement with search will be incorporated into the overall development plan and schedule. Bottom line is, this is, I'll say, where I come from, we call it a charade, but here it might be a charade or kabuki theater, that this is written for search. So let's just cut out the middle person and begin to go to really where it should be. The best use and its highest use, which is part of the RFP, has to do with its use as a medical facility, which is what they want to use it for. They've purchased the entire frontage along Halibut Point, so clearly they want it, and so that at the same time represents the city's leverage. They're approaching this as a business deal, and I think we should too. My guess is they already know kind of what its value is and what they wish to purchase it for. I understood that we would already have our assessment done at this time, and it'd be interesting to know if it has been done and to have an idea. We could save a lot of time and money and just give the building to search, because there are federal and state guidelines for which they have to maintain it if they want to keep it as a healthcare facility. That's number one. And number two is it would free the city of any obligation to care for the building. That being said, we would just lease the land, and we could do it very well. I did curl up with the APA agreement and refreshed myself with the lease agreement that this city signed with Search. And there are some very interesting items there, including the fact that it's a one-time $1 term lease agreement. Does anybody here know what happens in July of 2024 when the lease comes up? What is our obligation to them? And the other thing in the RFP, they don't mention little things like sovereign immunity, et cetera, and how this will affect things. Thank you.
Any other comments before we begin our discussion this evening? John, did you want to start this one out for us? Kind of give us some framework here of what you're looking for?
I can. Well, it's really only one question that I'm asking today. I think I received pretty clear guidance from the Assembly in the past few meetings, but this was one of the due outs that we've provided back. I put the entire history in the memo, and I try to make that a point every time we discuss this issue. I put as enclosures all the past history, so everything is in one packet, and anybody that goes and pulls the agenda online can see this as well. So what I tried to do was add to the timeline. I tried to summarize the town hall notes from both sessions, and I just put some very high level, what the survey results were. In no way, shape, or form are any of the survey results, both in person or the ones done online or the ones done on paper, a scientific method. As you've already heard once, one person attended both sessions and voted online. So there are many cases where we might be counting yeses 3 times. We might be counting no's 2 or 3 times. So this is just to give you kind of a flavor of what we saw. Give the Assembly a sense of kind of where the community stands on this, and even just the number of people that participated kind of gives you an idea in their drive to participate in the process as well. So just giving you that information for you to consider, and provided a draft RFP, and that draft RFP was from an independent consultant. And we let that consultant know that we wanted to potentially sell this hospital and the surrounding sites that are listed within the documents. I'd be surprised if we said move forward with this version, but I did want to put this version out as kind of the baseline. And the very simple approach is to just say, do this one, put it out, see what we get back. Or based on these comments, based on the surveys, based on the town hall comments, are there more things that you want to incorporate? And if that's the case, I don't think it's best to do that here in an assembly session. If this RFP does not kind of answer the mail, then perhaps we could have another work session where we can discuss some of the specifics that you would like to see that are not in this baseline draft of the RFP. Hopefully that makes sense.
Great, thank you for that. Tor?
Yeah, I mean, when I read through this, first of all, I think we might be getting a little bit ahead of ourselves just because we don't have the assessment yet. That to me is an incredibly important piece of, and if we're not going to go to a vote, we don't have quite the we don't have the time crunch. I mean, a lot of the reasons we were on the timeline we were so we could go to a public vote. So we had that vote. And so if we're not, we don't have as big a time crunch. That said, part of the reason I want that assessment is we have to have a minimum bid. And when I went through that RFP, I didn't see that. And I actually asked John to see if I just didn't see it. But we have to have a minimum bid. Almost every comment I've heard, be it let's sell it or not sell it, has said we can't give it away. And it has to, we have to get something approaching market value for it. I don't think we should sell it. Some of the other things I'm here, I mean, this is a draft, I understand that, so I'm not going to jump over any particulars in it necessarily. You know, if we decide not to sell it, we have to figure out how we're going to pay to do things there, because almost all of the ideas I've heard for other things we could do there would cost us a lot of money. And so the question I have is, are you willing to pay higher taxes to do it? You know, we obviously have to include the current lease in the RFP, because whoever buys it would have to honor that lease and for a few more years. And then finally, if we do wind up selling it to Search, we do have to have them waive sovereign immunity. We absolutely have to have that, because otherwise no agreement we make with them is worth the paper it's written on. Because at any time, if they want to break it, they can just claim sovereign immunity, and that's that. So, and from what I understand, when I've done a little bit of research on this, all we would need is an opinion from their attorney saying that sovereign immunity doesn't apply. And then if there is a situation there, then that attorney's malpractice insurance would be paying us a bunch of money. At least that's when I asked my brother how you get around that, the attorney. But the main thing is we need to have a base bid, and it should be at or near market value. And so maybe we are premature until we have that.
Valerie, you'd had something?
I do. I'm sorry. Anytime I try doing the video, it cuts me off. I get in and out, and I'm not sure if it's what's going on here or what's going.
Yeah, you can go ahead and have the floor.
Can you hear me?
We can now, yes.
Okay. My thoughts are that what problem or what harm would it do to go to a public vote? I mean, if we don't do it as the assembly, you can get a citizens initiative with, I think, like 1,044 ballots or signatures, maybe a little bit more, and they can do it themselves. If we do it as the assembly for a vote, and we make sure that it says in the language of the ballot initiative that it is an advisory ballot, I think that would be the best way to go. I do see that these survey monkeys, they can be manipulated. I'm not saying that Search would do it or whatever, but Search has a lot of employees. And when we read in the paper one day that it was 50-50, then, you know, finally it came out, oh, there's 114 for, 64 against, 28, whatever. I think we make the public feel like they're more involved or part of the process if we at least give an advisory vote. And if that advisory vote shows 50-50, then guess what, guys, you can do whatever you want. Thanks.
Rebecca?
I'm going to go back to something I said at one of our very first votes, which was, I really like the idea of a lease. And I'm wondering, I understand that we said RFP for a sale. I understand that it's written. I'm wondering, instead of the lease that others in the body didn't agree with, what about selling the building and keeping the land? Or leasing the building and keeping the land? I guess that's what I'm getting at. Or is there some middle ground we can go here that gives the buyer long-term value they can borrow against while we keep control of the land? At some point down the road in the future, we would have the option to have it back because it's ours and out on lease. I don't know where I'm asking that question to, maybe John.
Yeah, there is some language in the RFP to accept lease options. It's not just completely a sale in that RFP.
Kevin?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you for everyone's input and comments from the public. I have to say, this is one of the hardest issues I've dealt with since being on the assembly. It's very complicated and there's a lot of emotion involved. And it's just a tough one. I have been all over the place, from just sell it to we need a public vote. Even before the meeting, I was going back and forth in my mind. Part of me would like a public vote because I want people to be heard and feel heard. But I do understand that there's a lot of emotion involved, and I don't want to make a decision based on emotion. I've also heard people who are not emotional about it and just feel that we should have a vote. I like the idea. I was toying around. I think it was either Miss Nelson or Miss Himshoot who, when we were talking about going forward with a sale, they made a motion to make it a lease before release. I voted against that. I have to admit, I'm not really sure what was going through my mind at the time. I think personally, if you ask me right now, I think that I would prefer a long-term lease. I would be okay foregoing not having a public vote if we did include it in the RFP, a scale that favored highly a long-term lease of some sort, because we would maintain control of the land and what's done with the building, what's done with it or not done with it. I think that would allow us to, like I said, maintain control of the property and allow any interested parties to put money into it to get a return. I do think in the long run, some sort of medical use is probably the best thing. It's a medical facility of sorts right now, and it probably should continue to be. I also really agree with what Tor said. The assessment is really important too. We need to know what the market value is, and this is a very unique property. And I agree with a lot of people, and I've said this numerous times, if we were to sell it, I have no intention of just giving it away for a little bit. We need to get fair market price. And also I like your points, Tor, about waiving of sovereign immunity in the contract. So I guess right now, if you're asking what I think, we all need to just kind of say what we're thinking so we can move forward in some way, is I would prefer right now to not have a public vote, but edit the RFP to include, it already has a lease in it, but to highly favor a lease. And I'm grateful that we've hired a consultant. I think that was a wise thing to do. Also, in the process, we should make sure that we do have a minimum bid. So we kind of have to wait until we get that information. Mr. Leach, do you know when we might be expecting that assessment?
I'd expect in a matter of days. The assessor finished up, I want to say last week sometime, and we were starting to run into that deadline. There was the potential of having it done. It was either yesterday or today, but obviously not enough time to make it into the agenda packet.
Okay, thank you. So with that being said, that's what I would like to do. I would like to, and it's good that the consultant did the groundwork in creating a draft, but I think we should at a minimum, find out what that minimum or what the assessment value is, add that in as a minimum bid for the sale, but also change the scoring criteria to highly favor a lease of sorts. That's my opinion right now.
And I came into this tonight not to approve an RFP or not to go forward with any other actions, but I came in this with an open mindset about the RFP, to compile public input, to hear public input tonight, and to see if we have a really good RFP document. This is, if we go forward past this step tonight, we're not approving the RFP for submittal to the public. We're simply saying that what we see within it, that we do like. Also tonight, it doesn't preclude any two assembly members from presenting an ordinance to put this to a public vote. We're just saying that we like the wording that is within the RFP. A couple things that I really do like that I believe are important for the public, and this is on page 22 of 22, and that's the rights of the community and borough of Sitka. The right to reject any or all proposals without limitation and or to cancel, reissue, postpone, or withdraw the RFP at any time without incurring any liability or obligation. I believe that's super important in this process. And I believe we heard that from the public multiple times. Another item I really like on that same page is the right to negotiate contract terms with the best value responsible bidder. So if there are things that come up on a best value scale that the assembly would like to work further with a proposer on, we have the ability to do that as well. Those are two things that I really do appreciate in this RFP. I'm not opposed to the talk tonight about adding a minimum bid. I don't know the legal perspective on that one, but that one sounds fine to me. As for heavily weighting a lease, I'm open to the idea of the lease in, definitely, but I wouldn't want another proposal to score lower that was strong just because they weren't leasing. I think, I don't know, it's an interesting topic for debate, and I'm glad the assembly keeps talking about it if it's important to them. So I'm not huge on a heavily weighted, but definitely okay with having it in there to see what sorts of proposals come up, and then perhaps negotiating those contract terms with that best value responsible bidder. So overall, I think it was a pretty good RFP. John, thank you for bringing a disinterested third party into it. I believe that's incredibly important in this process, as opposed to us trying to write up the RFP. So that's my perspective on it. Does the assembly have anything else for John? Crystal?
Okay, so as I was going through fresh eyes on there, I read the section about the proposal review committee. These are basically our experts. I know we don't have to have that together, but what are we envisioning at this point? How many people would be going through and scoring these to basically make a recommendations to us? How does it usually work?
Well, I wouldn't say there's a standard template. Obviously, for a sale this substantial, we'd have a scoring team that really involves the departments within the city and other stakeholders, maybe other boards, commissions, committees. There's many options of who we can use to score, and I imagine we'll have some legal representation in there as well. Again, when you have a very substantial sale on the table, there's a higher risk for protest. So we want to make sure that all the scoring criteria are out there very clearly laid out, and that we have a broad look on how everybody evaluates each one of those areas.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I'm sorry, I couldn't tell you 9 people are going to be there, but we would bring forward a scoring matrix with the team, and we would lay that all out for the assembly after we chose who got the highest score.
And it makes sense that you don't know that at this point in time. I'm just trying to wrap my mind around what these typically look like. And going back to the previous RFP for the marine haul out, I know we wanted to adjust the ratings to favor a lease. I actually don't want to heavily favor a lease in this option. But what did we do? We adjusted the scoring matrix, right?
We
to-
did with that one. We
the financial
adjusted
section?
one of the scoring criteria to weight more heavily towards the most desired option.
And so what we had here was basically a proposed rating scale that can be adjusted, and we'll do that as we start moving forward, right? This was just to put eyes on it, what they recommended, and we can kind of move the scale.
Well, this draft, there's a couple things I want to hit. This draft incorporates in the scoring, and sorry, I'm trying to get to that part. Yep. So this technical proposal or the score sheet here is based on the very early conversations we had when this topic first came up. So you can see that the purchase offer is very heavily weighted here. Everything else was kind of even, and that was just based off the general comments we got when we first started meeting. So again, those can be adjusted. We would be looking for assembly guidance on adjusting those if the desire were to adjust them. And that might be more appropriate in a separate work session if that's the desire. But one thing I do want to point out is there is language in here about a minimum bid. It's not as clear as just a insert number right here, but section 2.7.2 has some blanks there, and it says CBS has set a minimum purchase price of, and that can be filled in. And that's my apologies on the oversight there, but that is in the section 2.
And then we discussed this, and I know Brian's not here tonight, but it was language around if the review committee makes a recommendation and then the assembly does something different. I think I saw language, but it seemed very limited. So that was my only concern with the draft RFP at this point in time. But I know it's on our radar and that we're going to get it in there as far as assembly approval, because that's going to be a big part of it, right? We allow the experts to make the recommendation, then it comes to us for.
It ultimately comes to the assembly for the final approval. There's a couple different stages. I can bring forward who the top score was, and then the assembly can approve me to move forward with direct negotiations with that individual, and we still have to operate within the confines of their bid. But ultimately, no sale can happen without a sales ordinance, and that's going to have to come from the assembly.
So I'm in favor of a work session because it seems like a lot of details need to go into it, but I appreciate the work that has been done. The assessment, I was missing that. And I know that, we knew it would be really tight between this meeting and whether or not we would have that back. I have other questions, but those are kind of like, those will be developed as we move forward. So I appreciate the work that's gone into that. That's all I have.
I would like to see a work session as well. I mean, the scoring, looking at it, I have some issues with right now. I mean, I'm sure we could work them out. The project approach ones, I realize it's only 10 points, but if we sell it, they're going to be able to change it without saying anything to us. And that, their team, their first, their team qualifications and things, those are things that are going to be in flux. Obviously, the community and neighborhood impact should be in there. But then looking at benefits to the economy and estimated tax revenue, and I know that we started this process because Search was interested in it. So we need to be aware that if Search buys it, we don't get any property tax. And so would we immediately knock off 20 points if it's Search because we're not going to get any property tax? That's, whereas if another entity buys it, they have to pay property tax. I think these are things we're just going to have to hash out. And like I said, and especially since we don't have the assessment yet, I think we should have a work session after we do.
Kevin Knox.
So I'm in favor of seeing this go forward, and including, if necessary, additional work session. I think it's really hard for us to wade into the weeds of you know, where any scoring might come out at this point. Yeah, if search was the winning bid on in a sale and they didn't end up paying property taxes on that particular property, okay, their scoring is actually going to come up high because they're going to employ an additional however many people, and all of those people are going to live somewhere, and those places are going to be paying property tax and sales tax and other things like that. There's all kinds of ways that we're going to see ways to either measure the benefit, or if somebody just buys it and puts up a McMansion there, that, you know, one person living there or whatever, you know, that's a whole different thing. But again, we need to be able to look at, you know, what the options are and how we're going to be seeing any benefit for this community. Holding on to it for, you know, I get it's a great central location and everything, but if it's not doing anything for us and we're having to put the investment in it, that's a really difficult thing for me to wrap my head around at this point. So yeah, I'm in favor of seeing this move forward in the process and having additional discussions about it.
So at this point, it does sound like the majority of the assembly would be in favor of an additional work session to more in-depthly review this RFP. Is there anybody adamantly opposed to that at this time? Okay, Sarah, can you work with, can you work with you and come up with a date? Use your crystal ball and please don't pick a sunny day. I would prefer it to be a rainy, nasty. Well, we're not going to have any more of those.
That's not going to be hard.
We're not going to have any more rainy, nasty days for the rest of spring/summer. So
We have a couple of busy weeks coming up, so it may be into May before we
okay. Okay. And then in the meantime, if the assembly has anything else that they would want to compile and email to John, I'm sure he would appreciate that. And John, you had something?
Yeah, don't quote me yet on work session. It could be work session, it could be special meeting. We've had some conversations with Mr. Hanson on what the most appropriate avenue is to work on this further. Obviously, another meeting of some sort, but there may be things that we would want to talk about in executive session because you kind of don't want to put all your cards on the table out and open when we're potentially getting into negotiations. So, you know, work sessions are very different than a special meeting. So we'll work with the attorney and find out what the appropriate venue is to hold further work on this RFP.
Great, thank you. Does the assembly have anything else they'd like to offer at this time on the RFP? All right, great. That will bring us to persons to be heard. This is for any item on or off of tonight's agenda, not to exceed 3 minutes for any individual.
Richard Wien. I'm going to talk about the RFP, the lease, and so forth. The question is, what's the rush? If you look at the APA, and I hope people will read it, it is very informative as to what our duties, responsibilities are, and also very revealing about search's duties and responsibilities. The question is, what's the rush? It doesn't expire until 2024, I think July. So there's plenty of time. Now imagine what would happen if we run the clock out and they and, you know, we don't let them out of it because there's things that are called breakup rules. If we don't do anything, we may have them subject to what's called the breakup rule, which would give us $500,000 as a substantial breach of contract. The bottom line for this whole thing is that even if somebody offered us $20 million for the hospital, which would be great, for another purpose, I wouldn't want it. The best purpose is search. They're the largest employers. It's already a hospital. It has its purpose. If you look at the RFP, again, it is kabuki. It is totally written for search. It asks for a design plan. Well, they've already designed it. They look for financing. They've already financed it. You look for everything and they already have it. The quickest and best thing to do is to just go and decide what is the lease price in the lease deal. And you can eliminate all of this angst and nonsense. We would have a revenue stream. And if you go look at the APA search at that time, depending on what option we chose, and maybe some of the members who were on the assembly at that time, remember, search was willing to pay $11,000 and change a month after the lease ran out, or $140,000 a year. So in essence, they were willing to pay, I think that's minimal, but that gives you an idea. And then, and by the way, in 2024, it goes month to month. And so the bottom line is that that we can simplify this immensely. And we really incur no costs per se by pursuing the lease, except for having an individual who knows how to write one. And I just think that that is the way to go. And also, if something does happen, you need to look in the APA under partial termination of service and complete termination of service, and what search can do in eliminating services. In the new long-term care, they were going to give us 20 beds. It's a lease.
Is there anyone else who would like to address the assembly tonight for any item on or off tonight's agenda?
Hi, my name is Emma Thompson. Thank you all so much for being here, and thank you for your time. I appreciate it in advance. I just wanted to speak really briefly in reference to the Health Needs and Human Services Commission 2021 goals conversation that was being had earlier by the Assembly. And I guess I disagreed with some of the language that I heard used, and I believe that language is really powerful, and just wanted to share my perspective with you all. One thing I noted was the use of equity and equality, which I think of kind of differently. And when I think of equality, what I think of is giving everyone the exact same, so whether that's the same solution or something else, which is kind of problematic when not everyone starts in the same place because of past and current oppression, especially when we're speaking about people of the global majority. When I think of equality, I think of giving people access to whatever it is that meets their unique needs. And equity really levels the playing field. Equality does not. If we're talking about equality and giving everyone the exact same, then we're going to end up in the same place of sort of unevenness. But when we discuss equity, that's really giving people what they need to level the playing need, whether that's the playing field, whether that's resources or just access. And I just want to clarify as well that oppression persists and discrimination persists, and these aren't issues of the past. So I just thought it was important to bring that up today, and I really appreciate you all hearing me out. Thank you for all your work.
Anyone else for persons to be heard this evening?
Sorry, my name is Martina Kröser, and I would like to speak to the very same point. I also noticed that equity and equality were used as equivalent, and Emma just rectified that, clarified that. And I just wanted to add another definition that did not come up in this discussion or in this comment, and that is about privilege. I have a little poster next to my workplace, and that says, privilege is if you don't see the problem that other people have. And that is because of your privilege. And I think that many of us enjoy certain privileges of being white and well-educated, and some of you are male, that is a lot of privilege, and others who don't enjoy the same really deserve better, and they deserve to be elevated to the same rights that we as white people have always enjoyed. Thank you.
Anyone else on persons to be heard? Okay, that'll bring us to reports. I have several over the last, I guess, month, since my last report was not on activities. First of all, I had the privilege of being invited to a public viewing of the Elizabeth Paradovich bench that is currently being constructed. Quite a piece of functional artwork. It was, it's a very beautiful bench, and you can see the craftsmanship that's being put into that. My understanding is that there is a location selected that is currently going through some committees right now to put that bench at. And so the assembly should be seeing something about that here soon. Recently wrapped up a school district strategic planning session. I say wrapped up, we have one more meeting at the end of this month, I believe. But that was 3 days of pretty intense planning on what we're going to do for the next, let's say, 10 years in the school district. I was extremely encouraged by a lot of it, as it is a more modern plan than we've seen before. And it's, I think we're going to get a lot of value out of this. So I was excited to be asked to be a part of that. In addition, was able to meet Frank Hauser, our new superintendent. Good news is he can laugh and joke with the best of us. I do appreciate that. But I think he wears a lot of suit and ties, so we might have to buy him some extra tufts as soon as he gets to town, and tell him that that's not necessarily business casual here. So, and then finally, this weekend, I also got to go to the herring gathering held at Totem Square. It was very cold, but Edith's chowder and coffee kept us warm for a while. And if you didn't have a chance to see the herring robes that the dancers were wearing, those are absolutely spectacular. It's a true testament to the artists that we have in this town and the people who are have dedicated their time to making those robes. I honestly had never seen something quite as beautiful as them. So was really happy to go down there and freeze my butt off, but it was a good event. So, John, do you have anything?
Thanks, Mayor. Hopefully, Melissa Henshaw doesn't kill me at work tomorrow for saying this, but I wanted to give an update from her desk somewhat. I have a regular meeting scheduled with her to go over some of the grant and lobbying work that she's addressing. And one of the comments she made was, there's just so much out there, and I feel like I'm spinning my wheels and it's hard to get one of them accomplished. She said, but then you look back and progress is happening. So she's making some great progress and finding out a lot of good information and finding a lot of doors that we can open and step through and sources of funding and potential help. So one thing that she provided me with was an update on the America Rescue Act. They're still hammering out the details. And as I've told you before, there's kind of 2 pots of money supposedly for the city and borough of Sitka. But in the first one, it says that Sitka is estimated to receive just over 1.6 million, and that is to be spent by December 31st of 2024. The first payment will be 60 days after enactment, and the second payment will be no earlier than 12 months after the first. The Treasury is working on a recovery fund certification process. and the local governments are going to be required to provide periodic reports, providing a detailed accounting and the use of the funds. And the important part is funds can be applied to any reductions in revenue based on the most recent full fiscal year. So learning more on that one, we'll keep you updated. And speaking of grants, bit of a good note, and I'm not sure if you heard or saw already, the RTCA grant that the Parks and Rec asked us to apply for. We were awarded that grant. So the assistance in that planning effort begins on May 1st. So we'll be moving forward with that one. And the last thing, I'll point back to the correspondence. The CARES report is in the correspondence section of your packet. It's as detailed as we felt appropriate for this packet. There is more information available. You know, if people want the organizations that received grants and how much, we can provide that through public records requests, but there's a lot of information that we need to redact. Their personal tax information we'd have to take out. We can get copies of invoices and contracts, and those will be available, but again, didn't want to, this was a big enough agenda for today, so didn't want to pack this more, but we're very open. Please review that report, and if there's any more information that you're requesting, please contact City Hall and we'll get it for you. Thanks.
Thank you. Liaison representatives. Kevin?
Hi.
Just wanted to report that the Ports and Harbors will not be meeting tomorrow with a lack of a quorum, but they hope to finish out their season because their last meeting will be next month in May.
Valerie, go ahead.
Yes, I attended LEPC, status ongoing as far as like pandemic and whatnot. Library Commission last week was, they're getting closer to the no fine fees or no overdue book fees. And I'm sure we'll see something coming before the assembly before too long.
Crystal?
2 updates, Health Needs and Human Services. They now have a full commission thanks to the Assembly approving Lexi. And now they have goals that they could get to work on. So they're super ambitious. They have the 2 goals. You saw them earlier. They also moved their meeting this last month. So now they meet the 3rd Wednesday from noon to 1. So if anybody wanted to participate, that's their new meeting time. And then Historic Preservation, they're having a meeting tomorrow at 6 o'clock. Their agenda items, they're looking at their historic plan and recruitment. That's ongoing old business. And then they have 2 construction projects. And then you mentioned the birds and benches. That's on their agenda as well. So if you want to participate, again, that's going to be tomorrow at 6.
Sarah.
Hey, I just wanted to put a shout out for, we have quite a few openings on our boards and commissions, the Animal Hearing Board, Building Department Appeals Board, Historic Preservation Commission, Library Commission, Local Emergency Planning Commission, Port and Harbors Commission, and the Tree and Landscape Committee. So if folks are interested in serving on any of those or like some more information about what those committees do, they can contact the clerk's office and we'll get them questions answered and set up with an application. And then just in closing, I wanted to review upcoming meetings. So the Assembly has their semi-annual government to government dinner meeting on Thursday at 6 p.m. Followed by a special meeting next Tuesday. That's the annual evaluations for the municipal administrator and attorney. There's a regular meeting on Tuesday, April 27th. We have training with the state assessor for the Board of Equalization at 6 p.m. on Thursday, April 29th. And then Board of Equalization on Monday, May 3rd at 6 p.m.
Thank you. Any other reports this evening? Seeing none, there is no executive session, which would bring us to adjournment.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Assembly. We are adjourned.